This video is one that's been in production or been in waiting, I guess, for a long time. James Houston IV hasn't seen any on-field action since Week 2, home loss to the Seattle Seahawks. He's set to return now for the Lions' NFC Divisional Round rematch against the Bucs. His first game snaps in over 4 months appears very likely. As I record this Friday morning, there's been no word yet whether he'll be active or not. And he may be a name or a player that Bucs fans, if they're watching, have no familiarity with, and I understand that. That's understandable since he hasn't played a down since getting hurt in the second quarter of their Week 2 loss to the Seahawks. For the season, the Lions have really struggled for certain stretches to get to the quarterback. Now, here lately, I think they've had a paradigm shift, which I'll address later. I think it's actually kind of worked out to be a good thing that James Houston IV wasn't around for parts of the year, and some of you may disagree with that. If you don't know, he had 8 sacks in only 137 snaps in his rookie year. That percentage of sacks to plays on the field is ridiculous, at least to my knowledge. And I've only been doing this, trying to talk about NFL film and break it down to the best of my ability for about 3 years. I did multiple videos on him last season because from that standpoint, producing sacks compared to number of plays on the field, I thought it was nearly historic, and feel free to go look it up yourself and see what the numbers are. I don't know what they are. I know the only guy from last year in the NFL that compared, that had a decent sample size, 137 snaps isn't a lot, was Justin Houston, who played for the Ravens, and I got to watch both of them. And Justin Houston's numbers, sacks per snaps played, was not nearly as impressive as what James Houston IV's are. Last year, he didn't get on the field until Week 12 against the Bills. And, oh, by the way, he had 2 sacks of Josh Allen in just 5 snaps that game. Also recovered a fumble on a punt return. Lions fans and myself, obviously, are inordinately excited to see him compete again because he brings a level of one-on-one ability that other outside linebackers or DNs for the Lions just don't have, except for Aiden Hutchinson, clearly. Now, does he play 10 snaps on Sunday? Does he play 20? 25? Can he actually help Detroit defend Baker Mayfield and a Bucs offense that scored 32 points last week? I don't know how many plays he gets on the field. To me, at minimum, it should be on obvious passing downs. But I do believe the answer to the last question I posed is yes, that he can help this team with one element they struggled with in 2023, and that's getting to the quarterback directly, organically, with no stunt or blitz used to assist him in doing so. Now, he didn't play much against the Chiefs way back in Week 1, and I'll show about 6 plays from that game. Instead, there were other reps given to defensive ends who clearly do not have the pure pass rush talent that Houston does. And when I say that, I mean beating a starting caliber offensive tackle on outside rushes with no help or no assistance. So we'll watch a little bit of film here from 2022, and I'll relay to you some stats that if you're a Lions fan, you probably already are aware of. Or have some knowledge of, I guess I should say. He does, number one, in terms of this game against the Bucs, James Houston IV doesn't need many snaps to burst across the line of scrimmage and get to the quarterback. You saw that in this film that I'm showing. So here's the numbers. 1 sack out of every 17 snaps on the field. So from that standpoint, let's get him at least 17 snaps on Sunday so he can generate at least 1 sack or pressure if you accept that those numbers are going to continue. He may not be fully healthy yet. Here's another way to look at it. And I think there's people who probably call it an anomaly, what he did last year as a rookie. He won't repeat it again. I want to give you the numbers from this year for a group of players who, most of which I really like. And so, but I have to name them. Unfortunately, I don't mean in a disrespectful way. Here's the guys that played the majority of snaps, either at outside linebacker, D-end, some at interior tackle, in lieu of the fact that James Houston IV was out for most of the year. Romeo and Julian Okwara, Charles Harris. Now, Josh Paschal and John Kaminsky, they're hybrid D-end, D-tackle types, okay? So I'm going to put them in here just because the numbers work out near perfectly. And then also Bruce Irvin. That group of 6 players in 2023, they played 1,670 snaps this year. Take a guess how many sacks they generated. Group of 6 players. And look, Kaminsky and Paschal, like I said, play some D tackles. They're hybrid guys, and they're not often on the field at the same time. I actually think Pascal's playing really well lately, and that's one of the reasons why Kaminsky's been on the field less. Those 6 players, almost 1,700 snaps, over 18 games played. You probably guessed a number that's really close. Total, those 6 guys have 8.5 sacks. James Houston IV, as a rookie, matched that output almost identically in 137 plays. So in 8%, the total number of snaps, he put up 8 sacks compared to 8.5 for those guys. I don't mention those numbers and those players' names to be disrespectful at all. They're part of what Detroit's rebuilding and building each week to try to match up with whatever offense they're facing. But I think those numbers can be used to understand and illustrate that the difference in talent and potential is vast. And like I said, I like some of those guys too. Look, if you put Derek Barnes in there, and Derek Barnes has clearly played a lot of snaps at inside linebacker or outside linebacker, but he's not really used as a pass rusher. He's more of a versatile guy who can drop back in a 4-3 structure. They walk him up sometimes as a Sam. He's only added 1 sack to the mix. If you put 7 guys in there, you're talking about 9.5 versus 8 sacks. Reality for Sunday. If you're able to slow down or stop the Bucs running game, and the Lions generally do, stop the run or slow it down. And they did so in Week 6. They held Tampa Bay's offense to 46 yards on 16 carries back in Week 6 down in Tampa Bay. If you're able to do that again, you got to get pressure on Baker Mayfield. And they couldn't do that in Week 6. They had 1 sack, and that was by Julian Okwara, and 4 total quarterback hits. Additionally, not only is James Houston IV potentially a guy who can get to the quarterback, a guy who can make big plays, splash plays like this forced fumble against Justin Fields. He actually tackled Fields, I think, 4 times individually in that game. He's also very good on special teams. I mentioned him recovering a fumble on a punt, against the Bills to retain possession. It was a punt return. He also had a key block on a punt return for touchdown, I think, against the Jets in this game. And here he is shedding not 1 but 2 blockers on a kickoff from last year. So in terms of roster configuration, he can play special teams too. At least there's film of him last year doing so. He may not be as versatile of a player as Barnes, someone who I think is an early downs player as that hybrid inside linebacker, outside linebacker. But when it's 3rd and 6 and you need to get to the quarterback, and you already have film from Week 6 of certain guys not winning at all, he's got to be on the field. I want to talk about, now this is 1 pass rush from late in the game against the Chiefs. I believe this is early fourth quarter. And then I'm going to show you a series of pass rush reps by other guys. And again, it's not to be an indictment of them, but just the talent level is large. The talent disparity, is large. Over the course of 7 games in midseason this year, starting with Detroit's home win over the Panthers early in the season and ending with their Thanksgiving Day loss to the Packers. You're talking about 7 games consecutively. They generated 10 sacks. And I think right around that time was when a paradigm or scheme shift happened, somewhere in that time frame, maybe after the Packers loss. I should be more specific. The Detroit coaching staff, in terms of pass rush and coverage balance, I think they began to err on the side of bringing more pressure because they had to. Because you had a ton of snaps. Now, this is from Week 1 film that looked like some of these. And even in that stretch of 7 games, I know I'm not breaking down a couple of these plays in a row here, even in that stretch of 7 games, which included the game against the Bucs, only 1 sack and 4 quarterback hits. Those 10 sacks included 7 against the Raiders, a team that, oh, by the way, a couple days later fired their head coach. So my point is they weren't getting to the quarterback consistently, and sometimes they weren't getting there at all. I think to finish the regular season, somewhere around the Saints game or maybe a couple weeks before, a decision was made to bring pressure strategically. It's often safe blitzes. To finish the regular season, the last 6 games, they've generated 18 sacks. You may say, well, Coach, they don't need Justin Houston IV. In order to get those 18 sacks, they had to be a little bit more aggressive. Again, that's that paradigm shift, that scheme alteration, if you will. Forced evolution, in my opinion. They gave up a ton of passing yards against the Vikings and the Cowboys, and Matt Stafford certainly had a lot of success last week in the wildcard game. Even going back to the Saints game on the road, if you recall, Derek Carr, before he got hurt, he was 17 of 22 passing with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. It's my opinion that James Houston IV gives you more options, meaning more organic four-man rushes could potentially get to the quarterback. Someone else on the roster, not named Aiden Hutchinson, who can win one-on-one matchups. I think that's why the Lions didn't draft an outside linebacker D-end this past year in the draft, because they saw the talent last year. How could they not? If you saw the film, and I showed some of it to you earlier, if you saw it live or you watched it here, the talent is there. Now, I think it is actually a good thing that he wasn't around for a while now that we're here. Simply put, they had to blitz a lot more. But in some ways, use a lot more safe blitzes, 4 or 5 man rushes, trying to vary who's attacking. Sometimes it's Brian Branch, sometimes Ifeatu Melifonwu, sometimes Alex Anzalone. C.J. Gardner-Johnson had an early blitz last week against the Rams, similar to some of those that Melifonwu have been successful on. But what you want, if you ask me, is you want situations where you can have him on the field and Hutchinson on the field, perhaps on the same side like you see in this rep from week 1. Create a 2-on-2, or in this case, a 3-on-2, meaning they're chipping on Houston. They're also chipping over here on the other side, so I don't think it was necessarily a Justin Houston thing. I think it's just what the Chiefs were doing on that snap, and give Aiden Hutchinson the chance to have a one-on-one. In this case, he almost gets a sack. They call a hold. Now, unfortunately for Detroit, Kansas City converted a long third down throw up the middle of the field against the Tampa 2 on the very next snap. But this is what you want. End zone angle, same play. Forgive me, I'm sorry. Or the other option is create 3-by-1 sides, walk a linebacker up. So you've only dedicated 5 people to show a 5-man rush. Try to create a one-on-one opportunity for someone, hopefully one or both of Aiden Hutchinson and James Houston IV, so that you don't have to bring so many safety blitzes. Now, I'm an advocate of doing so because I think it makes you unpredictable, and I think it gives guys a little bit of fear of who's rushing on the offensive line, and the running back and the quarterback forces them to get to protections. He can beat people one-on-one. This is a rep that I showed you earlier on in the game, or earlier on in this video from the fourth quarter. Look, with him returning to the active roster just a few weeks after C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Aleem McNeil came back. McNeil's second on the team with 5 sacks, followed by Anzalone and Melifonwu at 3 each. It's really not difficult to think or imagine that if James Houston IV had played 16 or 17 games this year, number one, he would have matched his output of sacks, of 8 sacks from 2022. That's not difficult to imagine that. But that's really not the point, to be honest with you here. Since the pass rush struggled so much at times without him, they ended up signing Bruce Irvin to try to address it. I think it actually made their evolution a forced evolution. And in some situations, that can be a good thing. That may not happen if Houston plays the whole year at 25, 30 snaps a game, gets a sack every other game, and maybe he's 20, 25 QB hits for the year. By the way, last year he had 11 QB hits and 137 snaps. Now they have more options. We can bring safety blitzes. You can bring that combo inside linebacker safety blitz that they do a lot of times. Melifonwu and Branch have been really good at that one. They could bring the corner blitzes, or they could have James Houston IV and Hutchinson on the field at the same time and bring a 4-man rush and err more on the side of coverage. Drop 7 back in coverage, be it zone, be it quarter, split field, whatever you want to call it. Personally, I hope he gets at least 10 to 14 plays this game to add some pass rush threat and athleticism. Now, early downs, I would say Derek Barnes, particularly if it's a run down. But it depends on the personnel there as well. I would like to see him on the same side as Hutchinson, like that one rep that you saw on past situations, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, with perhaps an overload on the other side. So if you're going to utilize 5 on the line of scrimmage to threaten a 5-man blitz, overload this side away from Hutchinson and Houston. See how the offensive line and the running back respond. See what they do. Do they still bring the running back over to chip on Houston's side or to help out with Hutchinson? And then you've got potentially a 3-on-3 on the other side. Hopefully somebody wins a 1-on-1. I don't know what version of him we'll see. You may think that I'm overstating his potential impact. I want to add that word potential in there intentionally because if he plays to the level that you saw in 2022, it's a game changer. Because now the Lions, one of their biggest weaknesses, it's really 2 things that happen at the same time, is lack of pass rush / ability to cover for a long period of time on the back end because they're not getting to the quarterback. You can solve both of those issues at once by bringing safety pressure, but you put yourself at more risk for giving up big plays. I feel like that's the dynamic we have seen, particularly against the Vikings twice and the Cowboys. James Houston IV gives you another element, another tactical decision, I guess, or tactical option, in that you can bring four-man rushes and have another player who can organically win, which there was a period of time this year where it was quite obvious that no one else was capable of doing so consistently. Appreciate you guys' time, man. You had to sit through yet another video of me talking about James Houston IV. I think he's a unique player. After this season, won't be hope I don't have to reference 2022 film again. I'd like to see the guy stay healthy, get opportunities on the field next year for the Detroit Lions, and produce in a way that means that the defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, whoever it is, doesn't have to bring so much pressure all the time and potentially expose lesser talented guys in the secondary to giving up big plays. Appreciate you guys' time. Let me know what you think of the video and the plays that I chose to illustrate how I think he could impact the game. And also, if you share my thoughts that he could have an impact, QB pressures, QB hits, sacks, even a forced fumble, by playing only 10 to 14 or snaps a game. Appreciate you guys' time.